If you're here on the deep dive, I'm guessing you're all about soaking up knowledge fast and deep. And well, today we're diving into a real treasure chest of ideas, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, or the modern Prometheus. But this isn't just about a good story, is it? There's layers of philosophy and these really intense personal journeys woven right in.
You hit the nail on the head. And it's fascinating to remember, like Shelley herself points out, that this whole idea at the story's heart, bringing something lifeless to life, wasn't pure fantasy to everyone back then. Some actual scientists, like Dr. Darwin, thought it might be possible. So there's this blend of fiction and real-world intellectual debates going on.
Totally. And Shelley's own words in the preface tell us she wanted to go way beyond just giving people the creeps. She's exploring what happens to basic human emotions when they bump up against the truly extraordinary. This is more than just a spooky ghost story, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So think of this deep dive as our attempt to extract the pure gold from Frankenstein. We're going to be looking at the force of ambition, what it truly means to create something, and the responsibility that comes with it, the massive impact of isolation, and this huge question: what happens when the pursuit of knowledge kind of eclipses ethics?
Mm.
What happens when you know too much?
And it's a big deal that Shelley, right there in the preface, compares her work to giants like Homer, Shakespeare, Milton. That tells us she's aiming high. Frankenstein isn't just a novel, it's digging into the very core of human nature. Okay, so where do we even begin with unpacking all of this? Let's start with Victor Frankenstein himself, right? Where does he come from?
So Victor, he comes from this distinguished family in Geneva, a family with a history of public service, his dad's career, the whole family standing.
Yeah.
It creates this picture of stability, of respect.
Yeah.
And that really highlights how different Victor's path becomes, how he breaks away from that mold.
And then there's Elizabeth Lavenza entering this family. It's presented almost like destiny, right?
Yeah.
Victor's parents have this vision of them getting married someday. And remember Shelley's preface, how she talks about the importance of amiableness of domestic affection. This setup right here with Elizabeth really emphasizes those family expectations and bonds from the very beginning.
It was like their path is laid out for them, this traditional loving family life.
Yeah.
But of course, we all know how that turns out. And then we have Henry Clerval, Victor's good friend from childhood. He's important, representing a different kind of intellectual curiosity, maybe more focused on the humanities. He provides this essential counterpoint to Victor as Victor gets more and more obsessed with science.
And this is where things start to get really interesting. We see those first sparks of Victor's intellectual curiosity, but it takes this sharp turn away from the usual path. He gets fascinated by these figures: Agrippa, Paracelsus, Albertus Magnus. These guys were all about older forms of natural philosophy, alchemy, things that weren't so focused on hard evidence and experiments. And his father, he disapproves of these interests. You got to wonder if that disapproval maybe even fueled Victor's desire to explore these kind of forbidden areas of knowledge.
That's such a crucial point, that disapproval from his father. It creates this early conflict, right? This tension between the accepted traditional ways of learning and Victor's growing, almost obsessive interest in these more, well, let's say, mystical ideas.
And then, boom, we have that dramatic turning point, the thunderstorm. Victor sees the raw power of nature, of lightning striking an oak tree. It completely changes his direction. All of a sudden, the old philosophers are out and modern science is in. Electricity, that becomes his sole focus, his obsession. It's almost like nature itself gave him the spark, literally, for what he's going to do later for his own creation.
It's such a powerful image, right? Nature unleashes this incredible force, and it basically inspires Victor to try and harness that same power. And it's interesting because this ties in with the whole field of galvanism that was emerging at the time. People were experimenting with electricity on animal tissue, and some actually thought it might be possible to bring the dead back to life. Knowing that, you can see why Victor's pursuit wasn't entirely out of line with some scientific thinking of his day.
Okay, so fast forward. Victor arrives in Ingolstadt. Clerval's bummed he can't join him, and once again we see this difference in how their fathers view education. Clerval's dad, he's all practical. Education's pointless if you're going into business. But for Victor, it's clearly valuable in itself. Like, it's this inherent good regardless of what you do with it. It shows, again, how Victor is operating outside the normal expectations of society.
He's driven by something deeper, something beyond just practicality. And at Ingolstadt, his first encounters with the professors are really telling. He thinks Professor Krimp is boring. He dislikes modern natural philosophy because it's all about these small, specific goals. Victor, he's drawn to the grand ambitions, even if they were flawed, of those earlier scientists, the ones who wanted immortality, ultimate power. He's not satisfied with tiny steps forward. He wants huge revolutionary leaps.
But then he meets Professor Waldman, and this is a game changer. Waldman encourages him, gives him all these important books to read, and most importantly, he offers a more balanced view of those older philosophers. He says, look, they did make important contributions, even if their ultimate goals were impossible. Waldman kind of bridges the gap between Victor's initial interests and a more rigorous scientific approach.
Waldman is essential. He validates Victor's fascination with the mysteries of life, but he steers him towards a structured, scientific methodology. He gives Victor the intellectual tools that will later lead to his, let's be honest, pretty radical experiments. And for you, the listener, think about it. All these early influences, family expectations, the contrast between his friends, and those life-changing experiences, they all come together to shape Victor's intellect, his ambition, which is becoming more and more like, well, Prometheus, right? Stealing fire from the gods.
Exactly. And those influences, they lay the groundwork for just how all-consuming his scientific pursuits become. As soon as Victor dives into natural philosophy and chemistry, it's like everything else fades away. It's his only obsession.
And that passion, it grows so fast, it's almost scary. He becomes fixated on understanding the very structure of human life, this thing he calls the principle of life. This isn't just scientific curiosity anymore. It's an obsession with uncovering the ultimate secrets of existence. He's not just trying to understand life. It's almost like he wants to replace nature itself, to become the creator.
And to get there, he goes deeper and deeper into some pretty disturbing areas. Anatomy, the process of decay, spending all his time in vaults, charnel houses is morbid, right? But he approaches it all with this detached scientific curiosity. Remember, he wasn't raised to fear the supernatural or anything. So his interest is purely in the physical mechanisms of life and death. How do the pieces work? How does it all fall apart?
That deep dive into death, that's a crucial stage. He's taking apart the end of life to try and figure out its beginning. It highlights how unnatural his quest has become. He's way beyond what any normal scientist would do.
And then comes that moment, the one he calls his astonishing secret. He thinks he's discovered the cause of generation and life itself, and he believes he can now give life to lifeless matter. Imagine how he must have felt. He truly believes he surpassed every single scientist who came before him. It's the peak of his ambition, his moment of supposed triumph.
But it's also a moment of incredible hubris. He thinks he's achieved something no one else in history has, that he has this godlike power. And that feeling, it warps his judgment. He doesn't stop to think about the potential consequences of what he's doing. This is the danger of unchecked intellectual drive, right? He's overreaching, ignoring natural boundaries.
And then he makes this seemingly small decision, but one that will have huge consequences. He decides to build this being, but he makes it enormous, 8 feet tall. His reasoning: it's easier than working with tiny parts. It sounds practical, but it's a choice that's going to backfire in a major way.
Right, you miss that detail easily, but it shows his impatience, a certain recklessness. He's rushing ahead, prioritizing speed over carefully thinking about what it means to create a being that large, that potentially imposing.
But at first, it's all excitement. His ambition knows no bounds. He imagines a whole new species, himself as their creator, the one they'll be grateful to. He even thinks about conquering death itself, bringing dead bodies back to life.
His ego is massive at this point. He sees himself as a revolutionary bringing new life to the world, but he's completely blind to the ethical nightmares, the practical problems he might be unleashing.
But all this intensity, it comes at a price. Victor isolates himself more and more, ignoring his friends and family. He knows his dad wouldn't approve, but he tells himself it's okay because his work is just that important. This self-imposed isolation, it becomes a breeding ground for his unchecked ambition.
And that isolation, it's one of the biggest consequences of his obsession. He's sacrificing human connection, real relationships, to chase this one scientific goal. It's creating this emptiness in his life that will lead to so much pain later on. It's a reminder for all of us, isn't it? Connection, community, those things are essential. When you lose them, bad things can happen.
It's amazing because Victor himself even thinks about this. He reflects on how important it is to have a calm and peaceful mind, and he warns against the dangers of knowledge. He says when the pursuit of knowledge weakens your affections and destroys those simple pleasures, that's when things go wrong. He brings up examples from history, the decline of Greece, Caesar's ambition, the colonization of the Americas. It's like he's saying, look, when ambition gets out of control, it can lead to ruin. He understands it intellectually, but he can't stop himself.
It's so poignant, that reflection. He gets it. He knows the truth about needing balance, about the dangers of too much ambition. But he's living the opposite of that truth in his own life. Those historical parallels, they're like warnings that he just ignores.
And his body is paying the price. He's got fever, he's nervous, a total contrast to how healthy he used to be. It's a clear sign that this obsession is unnatural, unhealthy. So we've seen how this pursuit of knowledge takes over Victor completely. He's on a path that's headed towards some truly awful consequences.
It really is a runaway train at this point.
Mm.
That initial excitement, the feeling of discovery, it blinds him to the ethical mess he's creating, the huge personal sacrifices he's making. And that sets the stage for the tragedy that's about to unfold.
And that tragedy, it all starts on a dreary night of November. This is the moment of creation. Can you take us there? What's it like?
Okay, so picture this. The atmosphere is heavy, almost suffocating. It's 1 in the morning. Rain is just lashing against the windows. His only candle is almost out, flickering. It's a scene of total isolation, the light fading away. It's like a mirror of the darkness Victor is bringing into the world, right? And in this dim, unsettling light, he sees it. The creature's dull yellow eye opens. It's breathing hard, its body moving in these jerky, convulsive motions. It's alive. It's the culmination of all his work, but there's this feeling of uneasiness, of something deeply wrong.
And Victor's reaction. Instant pure horror and disgust. The beauty of the dream he'd been working towards for so long, it vanishes in a second. Years of work, all that ambition, and it leads to this moment of pure revulsion.
It's a complete reversal. Everything he dedicated himself to, all those sacrifices, and he's repulsed by the result. The reality of what he's created shatters his perfect intellectual vision. This isn't just fear of the unknown, it's this realization that his ambition has created something physically disgusting to him. This rejection, right from the start, is the first domino that sets the whole tragedy in motion.
He runs from the room, can't even look at what he's made. He spends the night in this nightmarish, sleepless state. And his nightmares are vivid, disturbing. He sees Elizabeth, his dead mother, all wrapped up in images of death and decay. It's like his subconscious is already trying to process the horror of what he's done.
Those nightmares are so symbolic, aren't they? They foreshadow the death and destruction that's coming, linking his creation directly to the violation of life, of family. It's a manifestation of the psychological trauma he's inflicted on himself.
And then he wakes up. But the horror doesn't stop there. He sees the creature in his bedroom. The creature's eyes are fixed on him, unseeing. It's making these guttural sounds, can't speak, and it reaches out a hand towards him. It's pure terror for Victor. He calls it a demoniacal corpse, and he gets out of there as fast as he can.
This first real encounter is crucial. It establishes the creature not as this glorious new being Victor imagined, but as something monstrous, terrifying. It's the beginning of Victor's regret, his guilt, his constant fear.
But then, a moment of relief, completely unexpected. Henry Clerval shows up in Ingolstadt. Victor's overjoyed to see him, and for a little while, he manages to push the horror of his creation to the back of his mind.
Clerval's arrival is like this lifeline to Victor's past, a reminder of those human connections he's been neglecting. It's a brief break from the guilt and terror that are eating him alive.
And we find out that Clerval managed to convince his dad to let him pursue his studies. It highlights that ongoing theme, right? The tension between intellectual pursuits and practical concerns like business that was so common in their society.
It's small, but it's important. Clerval's persistent, and his dad eventually supports his intellectual goals. It's such a contrast to Victor's obsession, which has led him down this dark path and isolated him from that kind of understanding.
But the fear is still there for Victor. He's constantly afraid the creature's nearby. It's this underlying dread. When he sees his apartment is empty, he feels relieved, but it's only temporary. The shadow of his creation is always there.
It makes sense that the relief is temporary. The problem hasn't gone away. The creature is out there, and Victor knows it.
And then we learn about Justine Moritz. We get a letter that tells her story, all the hardships she's faced, and how she ended up back with the Frankenstein family in Geneva after her mother died. This seems like a separate thread, but it's going to become tragically entangled with Victor's creation.
Justine's story is so sad. She's kind, she's been through so much, and the way it all connects to Victor's actions is heartbreaking. She represents innocence caught in the crossfire of this tragedy.
Now, Victor's recovered physically, but he's got this profound aversion to natural philosophy, the very subject he was obsessed with. Even looking at his instruments causes him pain. It's like he's disgusted by it all. Clerval, being the good friend he is, removes all those reminders, tries to make things easier for Victor.
It's a natural reaction to the trauma he's experienced. Those tools, they represent his ambition, his terrible mistake. They're symbols of everything that's gone wrong.
Professor Waldman, he doesn't know what's going on, so he praises Victor for his scientific progress. But for Victor, it's agonizing. Clerval, again, he senses Victor's distress and steers the conversation away from that topic. Even Professor Kremp's remarks he's congratulating himself, but Victor can't find any comfort in it.
It's that inner conflict, isn't it? He's carrying this terrible secret and he can't share it. So he has to endure these conversations, these well-meaning but incredibly painful interactions. It isolates him even further.
Clerval, on the other hand, he dives into his language studies. He's learning Persian, Arabic, Hebrew, all these languages. He's excited about it. And Victor, he's desperate for some kind of escape, so he joins Clerval in these studies. He finds a temporary relief in these ancient texts, in the world of languages.
Clerval's approach to knowledge, it's so different from Victor's. He's connecting with human culture, history, not trying to mess with the laws of nature. It's a healthy, balanced pursuit.
But this peace, it doesn't last. Victor gets word that his younger brother, William, has been murdered. He has to go back to Geneva.
This is the moment where the creature's existence directly impacts Victor's family. The tragedy expands outward, from Victor's personal horror to this devastating loss for his whole family.
Victor immediately suspects the creature, but he decides to keep quiet. He's afraid that no one will believe him, that they'll think he's gone mad, and he knows how strong the creature is, how fast. Pursuing it seems pointless. This silence, it's going to have terrible consequences.
He's trapped, right? He's got this knowledge, this truth that could maybe save others, but he's too afraid to speak. And it's not just fear of disbelief, it's the guilt, the feeling that he's responsible for all this.
Then Justine is arrested. They find the miniature portrait of William's mother in her pocket, and she's confused, distressed. To everyone else, it looks like she's guilty. But Elizabeth, she believes in Justine's innocence. She knows Justine wouldn't do this.
The irony is so painful. The locket, this symbol of love, of family, becomes the evidence against her. In Justine's confusion, it's probably just shock, fear, but it's interpreted as guilt.
The trial is described as this wretched mockery of justice. Victor is in agony. His guilt is eating him alive. He feels responsible for William's death, and now for Justine's fate.
We can feel his suffering. He knows the truth, but he's paralyzed by fear. He can't confess, so he has to watch this innocent woman be condemned. It's a hell of his own making.
Elizabeth tries to defend Justine. Her speech is passionate, heartfelt, but it doesn't matter. The court, the public, they're convinced Justine is guilty, and under all this pressure, probably coerced, she confesses. Victor is devastated, consumed by remorse.
That confession, even if it's false, seals Justine's fate. Victor has to watch this injustice happen, knowing he's the real cause. It adds another layer to his guilt.
After Justine's execution, Victor feels like an evil spirit. It's such a contrast to his initial goals, to his idea of creating something good, beneficial. The family goes to their estate in Bellerive. Nature, it provides a bit of solace, but it doesn't erase Victor's suffering.
The beauty of nature, it becomes this painful reminder of everything Victor has destroyed. His ambition to help humanity has led to destruction, despair.
Elizabeth, she's deeply affected by Justine's death. It's changed her view of the world. She sees more cruelty, more injustice everywhere, and she notices Victor's despair, but also this hint of revenge in him.
It's a loss of innocence for Elizabeth. These tragedies have shown her the harsh realities of the world, and she can see how much it's changing Victor, too.
They go on a journey through the Alps. It's the stunning setting, the grandeur of nature, but it's juxtaposed with Victor's inner turmoil, his suffering.
The scenery is beautiful, awe-inspiring, but it also highlights how indifferent nature is to human suffering. The mountains don't care about Victor's pain.
And it's in the Alps that Victor finally sees his creation again. He's enraged at first, but then he's surprised. The creature pleads with him, and he speaks eloquently. He wants Victor to hear him out.
This encounter changes everything. The creature isn't the mindless monster Victor thought he was. He can reason, he can speak. He demands that his creator acknowledge him, his suffering.
The creature makes his case. He says his misery has turned him into a fiend, but he promises that if Victor creates a companion for him, he'll be virtuous. Victor is torn. He feels a sense of duty to his creation, but he also condemns the creature's actions. In the end, he agrees to listen. It's a mix of fear and responsibility that drives him to hear the creature's story.
Victor's decision to listen, that's a turning point. He's finally forced to see the consequences of his actions from the creature's point of view. He has to face what he's created.
The creature starts from the very beginning. He describes how overwhelming it was to come to life, the confusion of his senses. He talks about his first experiences in the world near Ingolstadt and his struggle to survive, to find food and water.
It's like listening to a newborn describe its first moments. The creature isn't inherently evil. He's learning, reacting to the world around him.
He describes finding fire. He was hurt by it at first, but then he realized it could provide warmth, that he could use it to cook food. Then he had to leave that area. There wasn't enough food. He was sad to leave the fire behind.
Fire becomes a powerful symbol for the creature. It represents comfort, but also danger. It reflects the duality of nature, how it can be both nurturing and destructive.
He comes to a village, and the villagers are terrified of him. They reject him, drive him away. He finds shelter in a hovel attached to a cottage. It's his first real negative encounter with humanity, and it shapes him profoundly.
This rejection is key. It shows how deeply ingrained fear and prejudice are in humanity. The creature is treated as a monster before he's even done anything monstrous.
He starts observing the family living in the cottage, the de Lacys. They're kind to each other, gentle. The creature feels a glimmer of hope. He sees something good in them.
The de Lacys represent the potential for acceptance, for connection. It's such a contrast to the way he was treated before. They become his hope for a better future.
He even tries to help them. He gathers firewood for them, things like that. They're surprised. They think some good spirit is helping them.
These acts of kindness show that the creature isn't evil. He wants to connect, to be helpful. He wants to be part of something.
He becomes fascinated by their language. He learns words by listening to them. He describes the joy he felt when he could understand, when he could speak. It's a huge step towards connection for him.
Language is the bridge to humanity for the creature. He's desperate to learn, to understand, to communicate. It shows how much he longs to belong.
A woman arrives, Safi. She's Arabian. Felix, one of the de Lacys, is overjoyed to see her. The creature observes them, and he learns more about human emotions, about relationships.
Safi's arrival enriches the family's life, but it also speeds up the creature's education. He's exposed to a wider range of human experiences.
He learns about human society, about property, wealth, poverty, social status. He realizes he doesn't belong anywhere in the structure. He sees how hideous he is, and he starts to wonder, is he a monster?
This is a huge moment of self-awareness. He's internalizing society's judgment of him. He's starting to question his own identity.
He learns about family, affection, belonging, and he realizes he has none of that. It makes his isolation even more painful.
The contrast between the de Lacys' loving family and his own solitude is devastating for the creature. It fuels his despair and resentment.
He learns about the de Lacy family's past. They were wealthy in Paris, but then old de Lacy went blind. Felix tried to help Safi's father, who was unjustly imprisoned, but it backfired. They lost everything and were exiled.
Their story is a reminder of how complex morality can be, how even good intentions can have terrible consequences.
He describes Felix's love for Safi, how Safi's father manipulated Felix and betrayed him. Felix sacrificed everything for his family. And Safi, she defied her father to find Felix.
Safi's determination is inspiring. She's willing to overcome any obstacle to be with the man she loves.
The creature finds 3 books: Paradise Lost, Plutarch's Lives, The Sorrows of Werther. These books change him. He learns about good and evil, heroism, despair. He sees himself in the fallen angel from Paradise Lost, another being who was rejected and cast out.
These books become his teachers. They shape his understanding of the world, and they make him even more aware of his own tragic situation.
Safi's arrival makes the de Lacys happy, but it makes the creature even more aware of his own isolation. He sees their happiness, and he knows he can never have that. His reflection is a constant reminder of how different he is.
He's surrounded by the very things he craves: connection, love, acceptance. But he can't be a part of it.
He starts to hope that the de Lacys might accept him, despite his appearance. He sees how kind they are to others, to those less fortunate. He reveals himself to old de Lacy, who's blind and can't see him. De Lacy is kind to him at first.
From that blindness, it momentarily removes the barrier of the creature's appearance. It's a brief moment of potential acceptance, based only on who he is inside.
But then Felix, Agatha, and Safi come home. They're horrified by the creature. Felix drives him away. The creature's hope is shattered.
This is the ultimate rejection. It confirms everything the creature feared. He's a monster in their eyes.
He's devastated, filled with rage. He burns down their cottage, the place where he'd felt a glimmer of hope. He wanders aimlessly and he encounters William Frankenstein. In a fit of rage, he murders the boy and takes the locket William was carrying.
William's murder is a terrible escalation. It's the result of the creature's pain, his rejection. The locket, a symbol of love, becomes twisted. a symbol of his rage.
He plants the locket on the sleeping Justine. It's the first time he deliberately harms another human. He wants revenge on his creator, and he wants to make someone else share the burden of his monstrosity.
This act is calculated, malicious. It marks a turning point for the creature. He's not just reacting anymore, he's intentionally causing harm.
He ends his story by saying that his isolation has led him to evil, but if he had a companion, he could be good. It raises this huge question. Is evil inherent, or is it created by circumstance?
He's forcing Victor, and us, to think about the role of society. Did the creature choose to be evil, or was he made that way by rejection, by fear?
Victor is deeply conflicted. The creature leaves, disappears into the wilderness. Victor realizes he's spent the whole day listening to this story.
It's a lot to process. Victor's been confronted with the consequences of his actions, with the creature's pain. It's a moment of potential empathy, but Victor's own suffering quickly takes over.
He comes down from the mountains, filled with despair, burdened by guilt. The creature's story has changed him.
That descent, it reflects Victor's emotional state. He's going down into deeper despair.
He gets back to Geneva, and he can't bring himself to create a companion for the creature. He's terrified of the creature's potential for destruction, and he's disgusted by the thought of creating another being like that.
He's in an impossible situation. If he breaks his promise, there will be more violence. But the thought of creating another creature is horrifying to him.
He thinks about going to England, talking to other philosophers, hoping they might have some answers, some guidance. But he keeps putting it off. He's getting physically healthier, but he's still deeply melancholic.
That idea of going to England, it's a way to run away from his problems. But his past won't let him escape.
His father sees how unhappy he is and asks him what's wrong. Victor can't tell him the truth, so he agrees to go to England with Clerval. He's hoping something will change, something will happen to resolve the situation.
It's a delay tactic. He's trying to avoid facing the creature, avoid the consequences of his promise.
He's worried about his family's safety while he's gone, even though the creature promised to follow only him. The fear is a constant reminder of how far-reaching the consequences of his actions are.
It shows how much his creation has poisoned his life. He can't even protect the people he loves.
They travel down the Rhine River. Clerval is enjoying the scenery, the beauty of it all, but Victor is consumed by his inner turmoil. He can't find any peace.
It's such a stark contrast. Clerval is alive, joyful, but Victor is dead inside. He's haunted by his creation.
Clerval is so sensitive, so enthusiastic about life, it makes what's going to happen to him even more tragic. They go to London, and then a letter from a friend convinces them to travel north to Scotland.
Clerval's spirit, his love for life, it makes his fate so much more heartbreaking.
They travel through Cumberland and Westmoreland. Clerval loves it. He's describing everything he sees. But Victor is getting more and more anxious. He hasn't fulfilled his promise to the creature, and he's afraid for his family.
Victor's anxiety is building. He's torn between his responsibility to the creature and his love for his family.
He starts to worry that the creature might harm Clerval. He becomes overly protective of his friend. It shows how paranoid he's become, how much guilt he's carrying.
He's trying to protect Clerval, but it's a desperate attempt. He can't control the creature, and he can't stop fate.
They get to Perth, and Victor decides to leave Clerval behind. He says he needs to go to a remote part of Scotland to work on something, but he's really hoping the creature will follow him. He still believes, or maybe just hopes, that he can fulfill his promise and create a companion.
He's isolating himself again. Maybe he thinks he can protect Clerval by keeping him away from the creature.
He starts working on the female creature, but then he has a change of heart. He realizes how dangerous it would be to bring another creature into the world. He destroys his work.
This is a major turning point for Victor. He's finally thinking about the consequences of his actions. He's choosing to defy the creature, even though he knows it will be dangerous.
The creature sees him destroy the female creature, and he's furious. He threatens Victor, says, "I will be with you on your wedding night." It's a chilling promise, and it fills Victor with dread.
The creature's threat is personal. It's directed at Victor's happiness. It's a foreshadowing of the tragedy that's coming.
Victor is terrified for Elizabeth. He decides to fight the creature, to protect her. He travels back to Geneva, but there's this feeling of doom hanging over him.
He's not running away anymore. He's going to face the consequences of his actions. He's going to try to protect the people he loves.
He gets a letter from his father urging him to come home and marry Elizabeth. He does, even though he's filled with dread. The wedding day arrives, but despite all his precautions, the creature makes good on his promise. Elizabeth is murdered.
The wedding, a day of supposed joy, becomes the day of ultimate tragedy. Victor's efforts to protect Elizabeth fail. The creature is relentless.
Victor is devastated. He knows he's responsible for Elizabeth's death. His father dies from grief. Victor's broken, driven by vengeance. He sets out to hunt down the creature.
The loss of Elizabeth and his father destroys Victor. All that's left is this burning desire for revenge.
His pursuit takes him to the Arctic, where he meets Captain Walton. Walton is writing letters to his sister, and his narrative frames the end of the story. Walton's ship gets trapped in the ice, and Victor, he's dying. He tells Walton his story.
Walton becomes Victor's witness, the person who hears his confession. It's a story of ambition, creation, and the destructive power of vengeance.
Victor is weak, but he still wants to destroy the creature. And then, after Victor dies, the creature appears on Walton's ship. He mourns Victor, and he explains his actions, his misery.
The creature's appearance after Victor's death adds another layer to the tragedy. He regrets Victor's death, and he finally reveals the depth of his own suffering.
He says that Victor was his last victim, that he's going to end his own life. He leaves the ship, disappears into the Arctic wilderness.
He chooses to die. He's accepted his isolation, the consequences of his actions. It's a tragic end to his tormented existence.
So here we are at the end of our deep dive into Frankenstein.